The topic for this research is collateralized stablecoin. A collateralized stablecoin is a fungible token whose value proposition is to remain pegged to a real-world currency, usually the US dollar. Collateralized stablecoin derive their value from a certain amount of collateral, which is locked in a smart contract and serves to peg a certain amount of outstanding stablecoins. Most of the time, the collateral is represented by a volatile assets. Therefore, one of the major challenges for the projects present in this sector is to find the right balance between capital efficiency and healthy collateralization ratio. In order to analyze this class of crypto assets, we're going to use a general framework looking at the sector from three different perspectives. In market design, we're going to look at the environment behind the stablecoins. In mechanism design, we're going to analyze the set of algorithmic rules that govern the stabilization method of the token. And lastly, in token design, we're going to look at how a secondary token could be used to improve the functionality of the system.
For our market design, we analyzed the demand for the stablecoins based on amount and volume of transactions between the users and protocols over a specific period, and visualized them in a graphical network to evaluate the centralization of the stablecoins and how influential and widely used the tokens are among the users.
For visualization dashboards, we analyze the visibility of the tokens. This is done through understanding the network growth, in which we compare the number of transactions against the total security supply. A second metric is to quantify the trends of visibility. We also look at the growth rate of daily token transfers. The last measure of marketedness is the distribution of transactions, where we try to understand the system as a whole.
Under the mechanism design of these stable tokens, we look more at the qualitative aspects, such as the amount of improvement proposals passed, its stability mechanism, as well as the peg verification to determine the price of these assets. These are really important in understanding the monetary policy as well as the protocol-specific systems design and economics design to determine how robust these stablecoins are. So that is everything got to do with the mechanism design part. This can be quite similar to token design, because it is all regarding the stable token itself and the stable coin. It doesn't have much more utility, doesn't have much more governance mechanism because the price is pegged. Hence, oracles will be very important in this aspect, understanding how it works and understanding how it verifies the peg value.
To analyze the stability of the tokens, we use the historical data, both daily and hourly frequency. Using the four moments, that is the mean, standard deviation, skewness and kurtosis, we generated a combined metric. Then we use this metric to analyze the protocols against each other.
The goal of this research is to understand which parts of different protocol design might have the most effect on final scenario we're seeing playing out in the reserve-based stablecoin market. Specifically, the goal of a stablecoin is to optimize for stability. To do that, we divided the discussion into 6 categories: network effects, demand, governance, stability, incentives, and secondary token. Network effects. A decentralized network spreads transactional information across multiple channels rather than relying on a single point of contact. Rapidly and effectively disseminated information makes the network more decentralized and influential. The number of links held between each transaction determines the degree of centrality score. Having a large number of transactions, however, does not determine the network influence. We observe that the network scoring low is primarily due to the network as a whole not really being connected to the rest of the DeFi ecosystem. Demand. Demand of a stablecoin is determined by the number of transactions over the amount of circulation. Generally, a higher percentage will suggest a higher usability rate of stablecoin. Ideally, we would like to see a stablecoin with a high and growing monthly transaction. A transaction growing faster, obviously, than the supply expanding. On this regard, we obviously looked at the stability via the velocity and the relationship between demand, supply, and stability. Governance. Governance can be divided into hard governance and soft governance. Hard governance includes the rules, the mechanism, and the ecosystem policy fully embedded in code. We discussed the governance style, liquidity for example, and governance capabilities. So we dig down on what we have witnessed in Faye, Venus, synthetics. Stability. we have identified a few dimensions that can be better put in perspective for the spectrum of stability, which are frequency distribution of prices, speed, efficiency, and the stability mechanism, if it's direct or has an implied arbitrage protocols. So these are all different, I would say, dimension of stability, which we define on a spectrum. Incentives. We have identified two major approaches to analyze incentives around collateralized stablecoin. Of course, focus on the recurring theme of the fulcrum of this research, which is stability. The second one includes mere incentives that do not really contribute to help out the stability of the protocol, but simply rely on economic interests. So again, incentive and stability and pure economic incentives. Finally, we discussed a secondary token. In all the protocol we studied, a secondary token was present. Secondary token can cover a multitude of different use cases. Could be governance, could be risk reallocation, could be incentivization, and use cases linked really to the game theoretic mechanism in the protocol. Technically speaking, a secondary token could be avoided, but we have seen that when a secondary token is used for governance of a protocol, and in most of the crypto networks that we are in consideration, that was the case, one important question arises. What type of user should the protocol aim to target with the token? It does exist a clear trade-off between wanting to target the most active and involved individual on one hand, and wanting to reach the largest number of people for reason of decentralization and aggregate demand.
We prepared some recommendations for collateralized stablecoin protocols to improve the various facets of their stablecoins and give their users a better experience and a better currency. To boost demand for your coins, you need to get your fundamentals in check, such as stability, liquid markets, and good governance. To improve network effects, protocols should focus on a few DEXs and grow their user base there rather than spread out their liquidity thin. Partnerships created with non-stablecoin protocols should create meaningful use cases, going beyond mere publicity for both projects, which will additionally boost demand. Decentralized governance has had a rough path and few successes, but we can see some patterns that make governance systems work. Voting needs to be incentivized at every step of the way, and expenses of voting need to be reimbursed, giving a possible use case to the stablecoin itself. Responsible governance is already implicitly incentivized by the token value being tied to the protocol's health. Voting needs to be limited to major decisions on the path of the project. Menial or urgent decisions should be left to an executive body that has a popular mandate, as far as that is possible. While decentralizations should always be the goal, it's not required in the protocol's infancy and could also be detrimental to early development. To set up an adequate collateralization ratio, an equilibrium between capital efficiency and insolvency risks must be found. Therefore, we believe that for setting adequate collateralization parameters, the proverbial wisdom of crowds should be leveraged. In particular, we believe that the parameters should be set either with a decentralized governance mechanism based upon proper incentives or through information gathered by a market.
We propose some general guidelines for designing incentives effective at fostering a healthy development of the ecosystem. As already said, active users can be incentivized to take part in protocol governance by making responsible decisions. Secondly, users can safeguard the stablecoin stability by holding the token even in distressed markets. If users are willing to hold, fluctuation in price do not get amplified but gain theoretic consideration on the solvency of the protocol. As an example, protocols like FEI suspend the one-to-one convertibility of the stablecoin in a distressed market scenario. Lastly, users could contribute to the protocol stability by deciding to take on some insolvency risk. A system where users stake some tokens to cover insolvent debt positions could be designed. We believe that a secondary token is overall a good tool to have. That said, several best practices should be kept in mind during the design phase. The secondary token should be part of a broader picture where stability and longevity is the main goal. This means that one important, if not the main, raison d'être for the token will be its actual contribution to the stability mechanism. The token, should have a balanced design of incentives to meet an attractive early bootstrap plan and a long-term recurring incentives that warrants a certain predictable loyalty from the holders. Finally, on the governance function of the token, it is hard to give a recommendation without picking a side. Some of us believe minimal governance is actually a viable solution and it is working well in practice. Others say a natural evolution of the protocol is instrumental for the long-term success that need to be seen as an integral part of the overall fast-moving DeFi ecosystem.
While there is still a long way to go before mass adoption, stablecoin already reflected many of the qualities exhibited by ordinary currencies. In the report, we found that collateralized stablecoin often deviate from their peg by significant margins. There is no question that DAI is the king of decentralized collateralized stablecoin, with a precisely held peg, large daily volume, and an active governance. Secondary token was found to be an extremely useful tool in the design of a stablecoin for many different reasons. It allows the allocation of governance power to different users from stablecoin holders. It could be integrated cleverly in the system to provide different utilities, and lastly, the token can be used in the early stages of the protocol to bootstrap adoption through incentives programs. The stabilization methods were almost all based on third-party arbiters rebalancing the peg. We found arbitrage strategies to be an extremely effective mechanism to maintain the peg of different stablecoins. DeFi is facing similar issues as our societies, with democracy not always working as intended. Whales may control too much voting power, and developers often release unready protocol or features. Designing a really good and a resilient decentralized governance system is very hard, and it's hard to say that it's ever been done so far.